Bridgeport is an urban school. It is in a city. So it's not a small rural town, which is very idyllic. You know, you interact with people. There's lots of people walking around. When you're in a big city, you can get a pickpocket or you can have some sort of incident which can scare you. However, on campus in Bridgeport, we have 24-hour security.
Okay.
If you're living on campus, you have nothing to worry about. All the buildings are secure. There's a card access to go to your dorm. Or if you want to go from one part of the campus to the other and it's dark, you can just call. There's buttons everywhere, and a policeman on a bicycle will come, or they will accompany you.
But would you hold it relevant for the present climate, because things have seemed to change to a certain extent these days? I mean, I didn't want to bring this up so early in the conversation, but from what I hear, I mean, there's a certain degree of apprehension seeping into the psyche of Indian students, maybe to some extent, or maybe the parents. Would you see any reasons for that in particular in this climate, or do you see it as a temporary trend? Just there's a lot of reassurances that Indian students and parents are seeking at this stage, especially coming from you who's lived that journey and who understands the sentiments of both the sides, if I can say, from someone who's actually lived through this transition for a very, very long time. I mean, for our Indian students, for our Indian audiences, how would you describe that journey for you personally, just in terms of having to deal with all the haphazards or the challenges that must have come along the way? What has that transition been like for you? So the diversity that you're talking about, I am sure it's pretty much prevalent in the campus right now. Was it the same back then when you were studying? What is it that you guys have done at the university to really, really make a difference? Is all the struggle, I mean, if I could call it an ordeal to a certain extent, is that really worth at the end? Obviously, I can speak on behalf of the psyche of Indian students and parents. They also, for some reason, have a sense of fear in terms of just security and safety for themselves, especially when they're sending their kid abroad to study all alone, somebody who's been with them and somebody who they have been very protective about. How does the university address that kind of a concern, especially for a parent? For a lot of the Indian and subcontinental students, studying in the US is not just an academic pursuit. It's a leap into a different world. Only a few people would know it better than someone who's lived that transition and is now shaping it for other students. I'm joined by Mr. Navarun Gupta, Professor and Chair of Electrical Engineering Department at the University of Bridgeport, Connecticut. Mr. Gupta is widely published, extensively mentored, and is now giving young students and engineers both a purpose and direction. Mr. Gupta, thank you for joining us at times now. I might have a lot of things to ask you personally with regards to your journey, but let's start by knowing a little bit about the University of Bridgeport. So what's been its transitional experience so far?
Thank you for the kind introduction. I think you went overboard. I'm not accomplished in that sense that I'm a Nobel Prize winner, but I have done my part, and I think I can say that I know a lot about the education industry. And especially as a foreign student in America, I was a foreign student. I went from India in 1989, and I've lived there for 36 years. So I can tell you what's going on in the education business in America and how it is now for students. So like I said, my journey started in 1989. I graduated from University of Delhi, back then called Delhi College of Engineering.
Okay.
And it was in Kashmiri Gate, an old building, and it has moved to a bigger place now. But I left because I had a scholarship. So I went to Georgia State University. I did my master's degree there. And then I worked in a small college for 6 years, community college. So community colleges are like 2-year colleges, almost like a diploma.
Okay.
And after that, I felt like I needed to do more. So I moved to Miami in Florida. I did my PhD and Florida International University. And I spent about 4.5 years there. So after a PhD, you have 1 year to find a job if you want to stay in US. And I struggled back then, but I finally found a job. I got several interviews, but the one which I really liked was in Bridgeport in Connecticut. Now Connecticut is on the other side. It's like far north,
Yeah.
and it's cold.
Yeah.
It's not tropical.
Yeah.
It gets a real winter season, snow.
Which is why all the famous Hollywood horror movies are based in Connecticut.
yeah, there are a lot of horror mansions there.
Yeah, the cold vibe.
So people said, oh, who wants to move from nice Florida to Connecticut? You know, people actually move the other way. They go from Connecticut to Florida.
Especially for someone who's coming from India and the climate is not really suited to the cold conditions.
Yeah. And also because Connecticut, New York areas are expensive areas.
Okay.
Whereas Florida is cheap. Not cheap anymore, but people move from those areas to south to retire usually.
Yeah.
But if you really want to do education and high quality research, you want to move up there. That's where all the big schools are: Harvard, MIT, UPenn. All the Ivy League colleges are in Boston, New York. Right next to us is Yale University. So that is the place to go if you want to have.
Is there a reason for it, the proximity for all these big colleges being there?
Well, the early settlers, the English people who came to America, settled in New England. That area is called New England because it was like England, right? Yeah. The climate is kind of like England. It's cold. It's also not very sunny, but it has beautiful summer. So when you are between May and let's say September is ideal. You don't want to go anywhere. But after September, you want to be indoors all the time.
Yeah.
So I ended up in Bridgeport, and I said, let's see how it works out. And to my surprise, I loved it. Yeah, even coming from Miami, I loved the culture there. It was very professional. Miami is more laid back. It's like
the Caribbean vibes.
Yeah, it's more like things don't get done there. People are just very particular about their work. But that's the place to learn things. And then, of course, you can go anywhere. So I was able to fit in. And I did a lot of important research work. I was able to get the support from the university. And not only that, that area is particularly conducive for Indian population. Because a lot of Indians, the early Indians settled in New England, especially New Jersey, New York area. There's a whole area called Little India in Queens, New York, Jackson Heights. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, and then of course Boston had a lot of professors used to go to Boston. Early, 60s. Many Indians went as professors and teachers. So that there's a whole word called Boston Brahmins. So yeah, that comes from all the Brahmin professors who went to Boston, right? So yeah, that area has a lot of Indian community, a lot of food, restaurants. So it kind of suits Indian students to be in that area, professionally, also socially. So I took to that place and I never moved out since then. So it's been what? I've been there since 2004. So 21 years I've been there.
But you must have only been finding your feet back then. I mean.
Yeah, I was young. But before that I had other, I told you I spent 6 years teaching in a community college in Atlanta. So it was so much different from living in the South. It is, I think if you really want to learn new technology, new up-and-coming research, you need to be either in New England area, near all the big schools, or maybe in West Coast near Stanford, or maybe near San Francisco area. Those are the two areas where you really get the bang for your buck when it comes to spending so much money for education.
Right.
And I think out of those two, New England is even better because you have many more schools.
But would you hold it relevant for the present climate, because things have seemed to change to a certain extent these days?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to bring this up so early in the conversation, but from what I hear, I mean, there are a certain degree. There's a certain degree of apprehension seeping into the psyche of Indian students, maybe to some extent, or maybe the parents.
Yeah.
Would you see any reasons for that in particular in this climate, or do you see it as a temporary trend?
See, I've been there 36 years and I've seen ups and downs. So it comes and goes in waves. This anxiety among Indian students, also the visas.
Yeah.
So a few years the visas will be, they're just throwing away the visas. Anybody applies gets the visas.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they'll clamp down on the visas. So we're going through that depression phase right now, and I'm sure we'll come up through it. But the difference this time is this phase is not a normal phase. Usually it goes up and down with economies. stock market is doing well.
Yeah.
A lot of students are coming in.
Yeah.
Markets are good. Suddenly there's a recession.
Yeah.
Like in 2008, there was a
Yeah.
crash of financial market. But this time it happened because of political reasons,
Yeah.
right? Already, I think they reversed some of the decisions.
Yeah, they have.
There was a few reports that students were being stopped at the airport. Some of them were sent back
Yeah. Yeah.
because they had some minor violations, like a speeding ticket. Who doesn't have a speeding ticket? So, but they have reversed those decisions.
Okay.
So they have been asked to stay back. So they already are going backwards. So I don't see this. This is a blip. It will.
Sure.
It will even out within
Sure.
a few
No, the
months.
reason I asked you this question so early in the conversation was because there's a lot of reassurances that Indian students and parents are seeking at this stage, especially coming from you who's lived that journey and who understands the sentiments of both the sides, if I can say.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that because I went through that depression and up. When I was graduating in 1992, there was a recession. And during recession, usually jobs become scarce.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are laying off people, so a lot of people are losing jobs. So that time was tough for me to find a job. I had to struggle, and it took me almost 6-7 months to find a job. But I was able to do it. Now, till last January, each student had like 4 or 5 jobs. I mean, there was like jobs for the begging, and they were making huge
But that's
salaries.
majorly the tech sector you're talking about?
Yeah, tech sectors. Like our students were having 2 or 3 offers. And I think in the last few months, it has, now it seems that there will be a recession in this coming maybe few months.
Yeah.
But again, recessions are short-lived, 2 years at the most, 1 or 2 years. And by the time the student graduates from now, it'll be back to normal.
Okay.
And there will be suddenly a demand.
Okay.
And when there's a demand, then you have several offers.
So, Mr. Gupta, because I mean, from someone who's actually lived through this transition for a very, very long time, I mean, for our Indian students, for our Indian audiences, how would you describe that journey for you personally, just in terms of having to deal with all the haphazards or the challenges that must have come along the way? What has that transition been like for you?
Yeah, it is exciting, but also anxiety producing at the same time.
I'm sure.
So when you arrive at this new country suddenly, right? And
Yeah.
back then there was no internet. I didn't know anyone in the country. Some Indian students picked me up at the airport. Now things are a lot different. Now you have an idea what your life is going to be like, but still you're completely going to a new country with new kind of people, new culture. So it is exciting. But also you're learning a lot of new social norms and how to behave and what to wear. You have these challenges, but it's exciting. You get to not only learn your skills, but you get to mingle with other people, and that's the
Sure.
whole point of going
Sure.
to a new country.
Sure.
You don't want to just hang out with your own people. You meet people from all over the world, not just Americans. You know, this
Absolutely.
especially University of Bridgeport has students from 80 different countries.
Yeah.
So you see Brazilian soccer players. We have a Portuguese music person who was in our program.
Nice. Yeah.
And people from South America, all over the world. So you get a global education.
So the diversity that you're talking about, I am sure it's pretty much prevalent in the campus right now. Was it the same back then when you were studying 30 years ago?
I think it depends on the school.
Yeah.
So when I was
Bridgeport, for example.
Bridgeport, since I've come here, it's been an international school.
Okay.
I think it's one of the top international destinations. I would say in the top 20 schools. When it comes to percentage of international students,
Yeah.
I think currently we have 30% students are international.
That's significant, yeah.
Almost 1/3 are
Yeah.
international.
Yeah.
So it was always open to international students. We have lots of international clubs. Any students is able to join, let's say, Caribbean club, learn about Caribbean music, and then you have clubs, student clubs based on not just country of origin, but your interest, math club, or maybe a ham radio club. So it was always international. We had an international festival all the time. We have regular meetings of different countries. They have a coffee hour. Indian clubs especially hosts a Diwali party, maybe a Holi party.
Great,
We
yeah.
had a Holi party in April when it was 5 degrees Celsius. So you could not throw water on anyone,
Yeah.
just gulal
Yeah.
and everything. But it was fun.
Okay.
It was really good. Foreign people came in and they learned
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Indian
Must have been
culture.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's great. They loved the whole vibe.
But has that collectively been a conscious call on the part of the university to make it diversify like that?
University of Bridgeport makes a conscious effort to encourage diversity.
Yeah.
We are a school of diversity, but we also want to make our students feel included. And
But after having lived there for 30 odd years, what is, I mean, do you still feel how do I put it? Is there still a challenge for you to counter at this stage?
yeah, I think the challenge is culturally not so much, because the general US population is much more aware of Indian culture now. There's Indian food everywhere. They watch Bollywood movies.
Yeah.
And they actually welcome Indians in general, because Indians have a good reputation in US. Most Indians who live in US are either doctors, engineers, lawyers. They're highly educated. So the image of Indians is that of educated, law-abiding
So it's the background,
people.
it's the profile that is being respected and not the individual, you would say?
Yeah, it's the profile. Yeah. So they do respect Indians as a profile. Of course, there are a lot of Indians who do, not so good things there.
Yeah.
So that part is not difficult now. But where it matters is the rules and regulations about immigration.
Yeah.
So it's still very tough. Once you're in US, you have to follow all the rules.
Yeah.
You have to make sure you comply with the regulations, and there are quite a few rules. And we have an office in our school which holds regular meetings to tell the students, okay, if you leave the country, make sure your I-20 is signed before you go. Make sure you register for classes before you go, so that you're not stuck outside. Students may not follow them and go outside, and when they're trying to come back, they may say, hey, you didn't do this. Don't break any rules and laws, even small laws.
Yeah.
Like I said, a speeding ticket can be a problem. So, and of course, when you are going to go from school to regular job, you're going to go through all these hoops, like getting a H-1 visa, even the green card process. You have to follow all these rules.
So an immigrant has to go through an immigrant has to be a little more watchful of the rules than maybe a native?
Yeah, you feel resented a little bit, resentful, because you see your American counterparts just with a bachelor's degree gets an amazing job.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas immigrants have to, some jobs are closed to immigrants, especially defense related, where high security is related. They don't want to hire a foreign person.
Yeah.
They want a US citizen only.
Okay.
But fortunately, there's enough private companies, and they would be willing to hire you over an American, because they know we'll work harder. So yeah, it's just a matter of keeping your eyes and ears open, and that's the struggle, I would say.
Understood. But from a university point of view, of course, I mean, when you say to make it more inclusive, I know these are words that are very casually thrown at this point. I mean, in other sectors as well.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, but it's another thing to really make the effort to make people feel included. What is it that you guys have done at the university to really make a difference?
So, all the universities had a DEI office, which you've heard about, diversity, equity, inclusivity. And we had one too, but with the new government, they cracked down on it. They said this is not a good word, DEI. And I don't like it, but they have a point. They thought that this diversity word was used to disadvantage of Native American people. They thought they were discriminating against the local population to promote diversity, right? And that should not be, and that's not the case in any university. We don't want to discriminate against white people and promote foreign people. So they call it something else now. They don't call it DEI, but they have the Office of Social Services, or School of Office of International Students. And to promote and make these students feel welcome, especially international students, we make sure that we have these clubs and organizations which are funded by the university. Students can go for field trips. They meet with not only their own students, but they can join a club from other countries. We include curriculum in our school, especially the first, second year undergraduate curriculum, where we highlight the contributions of foreign cultures. You know, it's not Eurocentric anymore. You see that scientists came from India who developed the concept of zero, or so you get to feel that you are included. So it's part of the culture of the university, and our professors are very diverse. I mean, just in engineering, I would say, in my electrical engineering department, we have one professor from Bangladesh, one from Egypt, one from China, and me from India. And then from other departments, computer science, we have American professors, we have, let's see, professors from, I think some are from Lebanon or Greece.
Yeah, so
So
it's considerably diverse.
Yeah, so students feel like it's not just, you are in an international environment. You don't feel kind of left out.
Which is why is that something that is really important, because sometimes now that Indian and subcontinental students tend to find their own counterparts and they find it their comfort to be able to just mingle with them.
Right.
But are they alienating themselves from the culture and the larger masses by not really making the effort to be friends with them, or vice versa?
I think there's many reasons. I think one of the main reasons is economic reason. I think Indian students usually don't bring a lot of money with them, and it's expensive to live in America.
So they have to be watchful and conscious
So
of their spendings.
when they live with students of their similar status, they can pool money to buy groceries together, they can cook together, and that saves them money. And usually they can live in a house sharing a room with another student, which usually American students don't want to do. So there's that point, but there's a lot of foreign students who are in a similar situation. So I've seen Indian students live in a house with maybe Albanian student, or students from
maybe Asian,
Europe, Asian students. So if you want to do that, you can do that.
If I could call it an ODL to a certain extent, is that really worth at the end?
Right. So deep question, right? It's all about what you really want. So when I was a young student, I wanted to go to a different country, and I felt that back in those days, Indian culture was very restrictive. It was not outward looking, but it has changed now. You get everything here, and you have the whole world moving here. So there's not much difference now between India and America or any other country. But still, living in a different country opens your eyes, even if it's just for a year or two. So if you want to really see another world, I think US is one of the better choices, because it's not just American, but you meet all kinds of people, all nationalities. And on top of that, economically it makes sense, because I tell my students, because many Indian students work when they're studying, which is usually not allowed, but on campus they can work. They have 15 hours maximum work hours, but many students work on the side just to make ends meet. I tell them, don't work right now, because after 2 years you'll be making a huge salary. I mean, they start with $70,000, $80,000 a year, and that's just the lower end. And you can pay back all your loans within 6 months. Within a year, you'll pay it back. So economically, also it makes sense. It is. I know there's a lot of anxiety about visas and things, but once you are in the, you have a job, which everyone gets. Life is pretty smooth.
That's kind of a statement that you're saying, that everyone is maybe guaranteed to get a job, is what you're saying?
It's depending on your motivation.
Yeah.
Like you say, they say pound the pavement, chappal ghiso jara.
Yeah.
Just keep walking, keep moving, keep looking, and you learn a lot more. I mean, it's not a comfortable life the first couple of years, but once you settle down, it's very nice.
So it's been how long for you just
30.
teaching? No, not living, but just teaching and electrical engineering there.
So I joined UB in 2004, so that's 21 years. And before that, I taught for 6 years in a community college. So that's 21 plus 6, 27 years I've been teaching.
So now that, I mean, now that you've been leading the entire department, you're the HOD, right?
Chair, yeah.
So it must have taken some kind of hard work for you to really get there. And of course, kudos to the university for recognizing that effort and really, letting you break the ranks. So what was that process like? What would you credit that amount of success to?
Yeah, so there's no one way of looking at it that it's a success or not. Many professors are very qualified, but they just didn't want to go into the HOD or administrative side, because
Sure.
HOD has both teaching, administrative, and research, right?
Yeah.
Some professors are more geared towards research based on their mindset. Some people are not people persons, so they don't like to deal with other people. So you have to be very diplomatic and open-minded and flexible when you're in this position. But I like it. So my journey was somewhat of a struggle. I had to do all the publications, research, and based on that, you go through the ranks. And then because of my mindset, I think they preferred me. There were a few other professors also who wanted this position, but again, for some reason, they had a vote and they chose me. So that's where I
Great
am.
for you.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And so what like talking about Indian students in particular, I mean, what is the kind of quality that you're seeing these days?
It used to be that
It's not the same as before, is what I'm understanding.
It has changed. We're looking at not just hard skills, which are math in engineering.
Yeah.
Math skills, programming skills, and what do you call as analytical skills.
Yeah.
These are the 3 skills typical engineering students should have. But now we're looking at soft skills. That's what all the companies want. Communication skills, team building skills, interacting with other students, writing skills.
But that's in addition to the core skills that is needed
Yeah.
otherwise.
But now these are given more importance.
Yeah.
In fact, all accreditation bodies, like our university is accredited by ABET, which is a very difficult accreditation. They want our classes to include these skills.
Okay.
So for example, in my class, I have a small part of the class is about reading, doing research, finding out class-related material, and collating it, writing a short paper, and then presenting it in front of the whole class. So it's like a lecture in front of the class. So
Okay.
it's a little scary when you're a new student, but that's something these students need to have. When they go out in regular jobs, it's not just that they'll be writing and sitting in a corner on programming. They'll be interacting with their bosses, with their colleagues, and they need these skills. Every job now needs teamwork.
Does it have the connections with the industry in the right ways where it could really lead the way for the students to have a better secured
Of
job?
course, that is such an important question, because this is how you get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
You start with an internship or something. So all schools try to have some sort of a connection, but we have something called as Industry Advisory Board,
Sure.
which meets once every semester. So we have, Connecticut is situated in an area with like 500, top 500 company, not headquarters. I would say out of those 500, about 50 headquarters are in Connecticut.
Yeah. So it's quite a hub.
It's quite a hub. Like GE is one of the biggest companies.
Okay.
They have a headquarter. Xerox, Pratt and Whitney, ASML. These are semiconductor manufacturing companies.
Okay.
They have headquarters there. So they are all on this board, Industry Advisory Board, and they meet with us once every semester, and they give us what is it that industry is looking for in our students. So we develop our curriculum based on their wants. So one of the popular demands is this social skills, like I said. Another one is cyber security. They want our students to be proficient in, because hacking and all of this is a big problem.
Yeah.
And now, of course, AI is big, so we have a whole program in AI.
Okay.
And we are trying to infuse AI in not just computer science, but even in general curriculum.
Okay.
AI is being
Yeah.
encouraged.
It's more of a, it's more or less a general skill
it's
now.
It's a tool,
Yeah,
and
it's a tool, yeah.
it needs to be developed. Students should know how to use it.
Absolutely.
We cannot just stop them because professors are afraid, hey, they just do the whole homework from AI. as long as they give credit and they tell us where they got the information and they show that they put the struggle into it, it's not something we discourage.
Yeah. But Mr. Gupta, the global narrative, as you'd agree with me, at least through the minds of Indian government, is being set as if India is going to be, or it already is, the big destination for talent, you know, that people could, from all spheres of life, even outside, could travel to India to study. At this point, and where especially when we have President Trump and the regime change, a lot of the conflicts, a lot of the confusion is kind of seeping into the minds of all the people across the globe. More so with the Indian audiences, because they're kind of confused as to believe in the strength that is being promised in-house, or really venture out and test their talent. That's kind of a conundrum. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, it is a lot of messaging, and even in US there's a lot of messaging. So on the one side, India is being touted as the next superpower, and I don't have any doubt when it comes to our economy, it's going to grow. But there's also lots of struggles here because such a huge population. On the other hand, US, there's this right now the sense that it is closing its doors to foreign people, and it's becoming more inward looking.
Which may not be true.
Which is, there might be some truth to it, but again, these are all temporary feelings. So I would say it is still a good idea to at least spend some time abroad. Even if you want to come back, just the experience of a foreign country interacting with the whole world and the latest state-of-the-art technology, which is still there, will always help you. No matter whether you come to India or Europe or no matter where you go. And now the whole globe is actually a workplace. So Indians are working in Europe and Australia and Asia. So you don't have to just come back to India. You can be in Singapore or someplace.
A lot of the students, Indian students, have a lot of dependencies on the STEM program. Does Bridgeport in particular integrate STEM courses?
So University of Bridgeport started as a small college in 1927. So it's almost 100 years old. So it was started as a community college and it became a 4-year university, and now it's a research university. But our focus is on job-oriented programs. So our programs are like not only engineering, which are professional degrees, but also nursing, chiropractic, which is like a physical therapy. So these programs are not just pure sciences, but these programs are meant for students to be absorbed by the industry. So I'm forgetting your question.
Was STEM, mostly.
Right. Business is not really a STEM course, MBA, right? But when it comes to immigration, they consider it a STEM course because immigration allows you 3 years of OPT, where the students, as soon as they graduate, they have 3 years to go anywhere in the country and find any job. They don't need a green card. They can jump from one job to the other. So that's the beauty of having a STEM program and getting into a STEM degree. So engineering, business, we have a technology management, which is an engineering and business. All of these degrees allow a student to graduate and stay in the country for 3 years and look for a job. So STEM is a big part of it. Now, they're also including STEAM. They're calling it STEM with the A, where they're adding arts and a little bit of humanities to it. And that's also part of our effort to add some humanities to it. And all our students take a few courses in arts and sciences. But eventually, it's more of a technical engineering, job-oriented degrees that we have.
Obviously, I can speak on behalf of the psyche of Indian students and parents. They also, for some reason, have a sense of fear in terms of just security and safety for themselves, especially when they're sending their kid abroad to study all alone, somebody who's been with them and somebody who they have been very protective about. How does the university address that kind of a concern, especially for a parent?
So Bridgeport is an urban school. It is in a city, so it's not a small rural town,
Yeah.
which is very idyllic. You know,
True.
you interact with people. There's lots of people walking around, which has good and bad. So when you're in a big city, you can get a pickpocket, or you can have some sort of incident which can scare you. However, on campus in Bridgeport, we have 24-hour security.
Okay.
If you're living on campus, you have nothing to worry about. All the buildings are secure. There's you know, a card access to go to your dorm, or if you want to go from one part of the campus to the other and it's dark, you can just call. There's buttons everywhere, and a policeman on a bicycle will come, or they
Okay.
will accompany you there.
Sure.
So that is definitely a concern. But if you live outside the campus, sometimes it can be scary at night walking alone. So I would say the first year, when you're there, always walk with a group of students, or maybe have someone pick you up. Don't walk alone at night. There's a train station from our campus. If you want to go there, it takes 20 minutes to walk. You can take a cab, or you can, there's a shuttle from campus, it'll take you there, or there's a bus, but just don't walk. That's my advice the first year, but it's overall pretty safe. But it's a big city also, so common precautions. Don't wear flashy jewelry, or you know, if you have a car, don't leave things like a laptop open in the car, or don't leave your door open. This is just common sense. If you lived in Delhi, you should know. So again, there's the concern about guns in America. Everybody has heard about guns and shootings. That can happen anywhere. Unfortunately, gun culture is big in America, and people carry guns. But in my 36 years, I've never had an incident where I faced a gun, or it's just random.
Yeah.
It can happen anywhere.
You can't predict.
You cannot predict. It can be in a small town also,
Yeah.
and it can be in a shopping mall also.
I mean, before we kind of dive into the conclusions bit of it, I mean, I would just like for you to maybe list out 3 challenges that maybe the current lot of Indian students or subcontinental students might have to prepare for while applying for studies in US.
I would say first is just to get the visa. I think right now it'll be harder to get the visa. Last couple of years, it was anyone who applied got the visa. So prepare for your visa carefully. Talk to your, you know, the agent who you worked with. They will prepare you. But in general, just be informed. You know, look online. What are some of the issues they're looking at? It's always good to show. One thing they always look for, I think, is financial background, because most students are not getting scholarships. If they get a scholarship, it's really a plus. But if you don't have a scholarship, make sure your bank statements are valid and genuine. They cross-check your bank statements.
Okay.
And if they find that it's fudged or something, it's over.
Yeah.
So visa is the first one. Second one I would say is financial aid.
Okay.
You know, this is one of the questions I get all the time. Will the school help me get some assistantship? So again, as a master's degree students, usually you get some assistantship, but it is usually dependent on your performance in your studies. So typically a student gets a small scholarship when they come in, a $5,000 scholarship, the first semester. But if they do well in the studies in the first semester, they get an assistantship, which helps them pay for other classes.
Okay.
And also they're allowed to work on campus. They can work 15 hours a week, and that is enough to cover the food and other rent and things like that. I would advise against working outside, especially with this current climate, because they're really checking against breaking the law, and working outside is not allowed. And if you're caught, they will really send you back.
Okay.
So I would advise against working outside. And the third issue I would say is the job situation. So like I said, there is a small chance of a recession. So in the next couple of maybe a year or two, there might be a slowdown in the economy, and jobs may not be as plentiful. But like I said, I went through the same thing, and I was able to find it. It's just how motivated you are. And by the time you graduate, in 2 years, it'll be back to normal.
Okay.
It's a cycle. It'll go up and down.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just it will come back up for
Okay.
sure. There's
Sure.
no question about it.
Okay.
So this might actually be a good time to go because by the time you graduate, you'll be ready.
Things will have settled down.
Would have settled down. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. I mean, of course, we've had a lot to talk about. I
Thank
mean,
you,
I could go on and
Oh,
chat
yeah,
with
this
you
is great
but
to
with
talk.
certain time. But
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, we started this interview and you mentioned that you still don't have a Nobel Prize or something, but you definitely look the part. And going by where you are, we really hope you do get one for sure.
Oh, thank you for the good words.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. Just before we leave on that camera, can you just say something in Hindi for the students who are aspiring to go to the US at Bridgeport on behalf of the UB University? Please, something.
Yeah. आप सबका यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ ब्रिजपोर्ट में स्वागत है. किसी भी समय आपको किसी चीज़ की ज़रूरत हो, प्लीज़ मुझे ईमेल कीजिए या मुझसे कांटेक्ट कीजिए. धन्यवाद.
It was absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.